All right, guys, back with another video. So this one hopefully is going to be a quick one. But before I go through the number, I'm going to show you something, the number that I'm sure you guys are familiar with. But this particular interview that I just finished from Urban Finance, if you haven't seen them, subscribe to them, go ahead and check them out. Very informative though. I love listening to stuff like this. But it inspired by me to do this video because of what he is saying here. Let's listen in and then we'll come back to talk about it later.
They're fake. They're all fake. So.
Here's the other weird thing, right? So about a month ago, I got access to a Bloomberg terminal, and we looked at the ownership summary, right? And the ownership summary says 28%, and everyone was telling me that DRS was roughly 25%. And on the ownership summary, it marks it as other. And I had my intern reach out to Bloomberg through the chat function, and say, okay, we know what institution means, we know what individual, we can understand what these designations mean for holders. What is other, and why is it so high? And they told us we cannot define that. So they have a function on their ownership summary of individual, institutional, other, and others number 2, right behind institutional, and it's 28% of the float, and they can't tell us what it is. They're like, we don't know.
We didn't write the requirements to define that within our own system or anything.
And it's their own system, and I was like, what is going on? Are you serious? And they wouldn't talk to us about it. And when you look at the other reporting requirements, obviously for most companies, it's like 2%. It's at the bottom of the list, 1%, 2%, which is what I assume the transfer agent is, right? That's the only thing I can assume. There's also other discrepancies. They double count Ryan. Any shares that Ryan Cohen holds through RC Ventures are double counted as institutional and insider shares. And when we saw that, we're like, hey guys, like you should probably choose because it's making the numbers look off. And they just said like, oh well, it's both of those things. We'll put them as both. And it's like, that's not how you guys should work. You should choose it. I would just call it an insider, right? Who cares that he has an institution holding it for him?
I mean, we struggled with the same thing on Irvin. It's a pretty tough thing. We decided to just show all the data, and people can kind of at the moment compile it for themselves. We're working on like the right way to compile it all down. But if you go to Irvin and you go like to the security page, you can see ownership, and you've got institutional and insider, and then we just pull out all of the transactions, and for some of them we're able to say like what that means relative to the float, because sometimes that information is reported by the company. But when it's not, it's kind of a guessing game, which is kind of crazy, right? Like it's kind of crazy that this isn't very easy to define and simple, and you can just add these things up and here's your float, right? Like it's nuts how complicated it is.
Yeah, it's overly complicated, and opacity and overcomplication is how they hide any shenanigans, right? This is what they do. And so
on purpose.
It makes it so you have to have, super high IQ and spend hours and hours and days learning about it and talk to insiders and figure out all these secrets. And even then you don't know fully what's going on.
I mean, it's very frustrating, to say the least. And on top of that, you have a political system that doesn't allow that to be, to come out, and people usually have a corrupt system anyway, where, the regulator are self-regulating themselves, and these financial institutions are usually self-regulating, right? And then, the people that are actually having to regulate them end up going back to work for them in the future. So that's why it's such a conflict of interest, because if you have a regulator who doesn't want to regulate because they want a job in the future, millions of dollars just by sitting on the board of director of some company, of course they're not going to regulate the market the way that it should be regulated. And so that's the frustration, that people like you and I have, because we don't have access to that type of data. We don't have access to those type of people, who have the ability to change the rules and all that stuff. And so that's, again, GameStop, it's more than anything, like it's related to so many facets of our society, not just a stock market here. It's not just a company who's trying to survive, but it speaks to a whole bunch of other stuff that we're not privy to. But anyway, let me get off of that and let me show you what he means by double counting. So currently we have a share outstanding of 305 million shares right here. There's no change hardly. So it's it's too low that we could count towards the float here. So insider ownership right here, this is Ryan Cohen, right? Mostly Ryan Cohen, and of course many other ones. And so the institutional ownership is only 28% here. So what he's saying by double counting is that this institutional ownership is also Ryan Cohen holding. So Ryan Cohen has two portion here. So if it's supposed to be counted correctly, it should have been institutional ownership only 16% right there instead of 28%. And so we're just gonna go by what we see here, and this number here I got from this right here. Okay, this stat right here, just so you know, right there. So I just copy and paste it to the sheets right here. Now when you look into it, okay, so inside ownership is 12% right there, 28% for the institution, yada yada, and then you have direct registration shares right here. Now this number is way back since September. It could be more, it could be less, so just keep that in mind. I'm just going to use that number because that's what I get access to. And then short interest right here is 22%. I'm sure it's probably up by now too, because they probably just shorted more. But let me verify it real quick. Right there. So 323. So let me change that. So 23.79. Right there. 23.79. So they even shorted more. 79. Okay. So those number has been changed, and as you can see, then this number changed as well. All right, so let's go to what I was going to show you right here. Now this is nothing new for people who've been in this play for a while in the company. You know, we're trying to kind of see how many of those shares are owned by retail, meaning you and I, right, when you buy into it. So institution, it's like Vanguard, Fidelity and all those big institutions out there. Index fund, whatnot. And short interest, of course, that's the number reported short interest that I see, that we see right there. It just means that 23% of the float is being shorted, meaning sell into the market at whatever price. It could be at 40, it could be at 60. They have not closed their position yet, right? Or it could be at $11 a share or $12 a share, because they think that the company is going to go under, right? So that's the number of shares being shorted against GameStop, okay? And so they have to, if we're doing better, the price going up, these people gonna need this amount of shares in order to close their position. So that's what it means. And then you have DRS. This is the registration on the computer share. Again, this is an old number back in September of this year. So again, it could be low, it could be higher. Okay, and then if you were to kind of subtract it from the institutional short interest DRS, then you have the leftovers, and this is what I'm interested in. Do the math on to see how many shares, how many people have to hold this amount of shares in order to own the whole float, right? Now, if this is the amount that retail owns, like you and I, buying 1 share at a time, 2 shares at a time, 3 shares at a time, how many of us would have to hold 693 shares in order to own this whole float right here? So this is what it means. So 100,000 people, okay? 100,000 people has to hold, hold on, let me do this so it's a little bit easier to read. So bear with me a little bit here. So what this means is that only 100,000 people has to own each, okay, 93 shares per person in order to own this float right here, right? 200,000 people would only have to hold 347 in order to own this float, okay? And if you want more people, right? 500,000 people would only have to own this much. 139. 1 million people would have to own this much right here to own the whole float right here. And so, you know, when you look at those amount of shares, you know, I own more. I own more than this right here, you know, this amount of shares. And so, and then we have been accumulating more, right? I know a lot of people, you know, around this range right here. And so you have to like think to yourself, how many people actually own GameStop right now? Do you think it's a low ball, like 100,000 people, or it's 1 million people? And so depends on where you think how many people are holding it. Now, I hope it's right here, you know, only 100,000 people. But I hope more and more people are engaging in this opportunity investment of a lifetime, in my opinion. That more people are on this end right here. And so again, you know, this type of number doesn't lie to you, right? What is opaque is the system that is trying to obfuscate that, right? And this is why they're trying to sue sue the SEC right here for the rule. Hedge fund, they're suing the SEC, the regulator, for this short selling rule that they have to, you know, give you more information about this type of thing, right? This shorted interest. So why is it so opaque that you don't get to see how many shares being shorted, you know, at any given time? And how do they get those shares to short every single time? So again, I hope it makes sense to you, what I'm trying to show you here. I mean, in summary, this is the cornerstone of what GameStop, the start of it, right? But just keep in mind, though, the fundamental is doing much better than it has ever been in the history of this company. Not only that you have good leadership, you have a good direction, you have an industry that is profitable, and the industry that is growing as well, right? Now, revenue is down, admittedly, but we are gearing up for an expansion in a couple years, right, after the recession. Again, we're talking about the looming recession right here, that that cutting rate is going to ensue in the next couple of years. Because like if we're running in deficit over and over again, eventually something is going to break, right? And so just be careful, you know, be prepared for any type of environment. And this is why I preface it by saying, like, when the market comes down, everything's going to come down with it. Doesn't matter how good the fundamental of the company is. The mechanic of people panic selling because they're afraid of whatever is going to happen. And just because I think it's going to happen doesn't mean it's going to happen either. To me, my thought has always been, if you thought of like the worst case scenario and you'll be okay with that, meaning like to prepare yourself mentally, I think, you do fine in this stock, in this company, investing in this, right? Because again, you're not emotionally like, oh, it's going down to $1, oh, it's going to 0, right? And then you try to sell it, and then the minute you sell, what happened? It just skyrocket back. And then you're like, oh my goodness. So the amount of shares that you used to have, you don't have anymore. I hope that makes sense. I guess that's all I have. I know, 15 minutes already, so I was trying to keep it under 10, but I'm sorry about that. Okay, go ahead and subscribe to Urban Finance and get some more information about those. So thank you. Bye.